It's time to get some SportSense. You're gonna get some SportSense. You better get ready for SportSense. SportSense.
What is up, everyone? This is SportSense, the show for people who don't care about sports, but want to know just enough to socialize with other humans. I'm Cooper Epps, an art director in the ad industry, and as always, I'm here with my dad, James Epps. Say hi to everyone, Dad.
Hey, Coop. Hey, everyone.
Okay, and it's not just Dad. Today, with us is a very special guest, my friend, my hero, even, maybe.
Whoa.
Possibly. Forrest Quinn. What's up, Forrest?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Now, just to get us started, who are you and what are you doing here?
Well, it's news to me that I'm your hero. But my name is Forrest. During the day, I'm an associate creative director at an advertising agency in Nashville. But at night, I'm a wannabe NFL head coach and former BYU football player.
Yeah. Did you know that, Dad? Did I tell you played for BYU?
I didn't. You didn't tell me that. That's great.
Well, I should maybe preface that. To say that I played is maybe a stretch. I was a practice dummy for I was a punching bag with a heartbeat for the starting squad, a scout team hero. Got my butt kicked on a day-to-day basis by bigger, better guys than me.
What position were you playing?
I played offensive tackle. So
there you go.
I was there. I was there when Fred Warner and Bronson Kafusi, Sione Takitaki, and Kai Nakua, who is Puka Nakua's older brother. So those are kind of the 4 or 5 guys that on any day at practice I was trying to block those guys.
One's a definite Hall of Famer, so that's pretty cool.
Something
to tell your kids about.
Yep.
Who's the definite Hall of Famer?
Warner.
Fred Warner for sure.
Okay. I barely registered any of those names that you said.
All of them are good.
Yeah. We won't dig in too much into it, but
no.
yeah, Fred Warner. What's Fred Warner's deal these days?
He's still playing.
He's at the 49ers, and I think the incredible part about Fred that is he's not particularly big, and he's not he's a very physical player, but he's not like bigger than everybody else. He's just so much smarter than everybody else. He just even when we were at BYU, we'd be running plays, and he's we'd walk up to the line. He's like, "This is what they're gonna do." He knows. He's just so smart, and he's taken that to the 49ers. He knows what people are doing before they do it.
And what he's done is I've watched him his whole career. He's gotten better each year. It's like he gets smarter each year, and as he might start having a little physical decline, his mental, it keeps improving. I don't know how you do that at the highest level in the world of playing football, but he is. So he's one of my favorites, and we pull hard for him. And gosh, what is he now? He's probably he's got to be 8 or 9 years in something. Got to be close to that.
He would have graduated about the same time we did.
Yeah,
maybe a year before me. So I'm sneaking up on 8 years.
Wow,
man.
Anyway, so good guy.
And the 49ers had a pretty good pretty good season this past year, right?
Nope.
They
got injured.
Yeah, it started off hot, but then injuries kind of crippled them.
I think they still were 6-11, right, or something like that. They had a rough year for them. Well, I'm just impressed, by the way, Forrest. That's awesome. No, I'm a football nut, and Cooper's brother played 4 years of college football, and man, what anybody does on any of those teams, practice players, if that's what you end up being, is still a remarkable accomplishment. And physically, that's something. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think that was maybe one of the hardest things we've ever done. It was really hard. It was fun. I'm glad I did it, but it was a lot of long early mornings and long days.
Yeah. Well, that's why you chose the super relaxing career of advertising to settle down in, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of those skills don't necessarily translate one-to-one, blocking people and getting in advertising.
But it is team-oriented, right? I've always said that's what makes football so great. You got 3 phases of the game, and somehow you all have to merge 11 players on each phase. And so,
And a lot of times you want to hit someone.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
But you don't, I hope you don't, right?
The intimidation factor comes in real handy sometimes. What do you think about my ideas, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. You said you have tweaks, bud?
What was that?
Again. Yeah. Let's try that feedback one more time. Well, awesome. Well, Forrest, you have come on today for a very special episode. A lot of you guys thought we were done with football talk, but let me tell you, we're
Never.
almost. Yes, never, but
Never.
also we're almost done, maybe for a minute. But today, most of this show we've just talked about the best teams, right? We were doing a lot of Super Bowl prep pretty much since we started the podcast. So we were talking Eagles, Ravens, Commanders, Chiefs, right? So today's episode, we're going to talk about a specialty of yours, Forrest, which is who are the worst teams in the NFL and how they get so bad. And most importantly, what are you doing about it? You're taken to the streets, you're taken to the phones, and you're taking action. And I love you for it. And I can't wait to hear more of what you have to say. So with that, Forrest and Dad, I don't know, you guys both chip in here.
I'm going to listen to him for a while. Believe me, I guarantee I'll have some responses because he and I could probably going to be full agreement about most of them.
Well, hit me, both of you guys, with maybe like the 3 worst teams in the NFL right now, as of like the end of this 2025 season.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think when you think about the worst team, I think there's a thing you should ask yourself. Is it truly the worst team? Or I think there's also this element of like, who's the most disappointing team? Because you look at a team like, for example, the Cowboys or the Jets. I mean, they had solid seasons. Like their record was better than other teams. But like, the Jets, for example, they had Aaron Rodgers, they had Devontae Adams. Like they had this star-studded roster, but they kind of like so underperformed.
Flopped.
Like they were so disappointing. The Cowboys, love him or hate him, the coach there, McCarthy, pretty solid coach. I mean, he was at the Green Bay, won really like a long time there. Love him or hate him, Dak Prescott's a solid quarterback. Michael Parsons, like they had a pretty solid roster. They've paid a lot of money for these guys, but like they just got embarrassed like week after week. I mean, what the Ravens did to them was kind of embarrassing. So like, I mean, you could say I would throw the Cowboys in that conversation, but then you look at teams like the Carolina Panthers, you look at the Tennessee Titans, even the New England Patriots. Some of those teams, like their records were pretty crummy and they weren't going anywhere. So
all right, he already got me mad. No, I'm just kidding. No, I agree with everything he said, but I would have led with the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants. Oh my gosh. But I love what Forrest said. I'll be quick about this and let him keep talking. But yeah, disappointing. But also, I think what you look at, so those are top 2 worst teams, by the way, we can talk about. But I think the worst, when I want to say the worst team, let's expand that. There are some who are the worst organizations, and they just can't get it going. I mean, Cleveland Browns, they had such potential with such good talent there for a while, and then they go make the stupidest professional guaranteed player contract in all of sports, not just football, all of sports.
What was that?
They gave it to Deshaun Watson. Originally, it was $260. I think first of all, football had not entered this guaranteed contract. Only parts of it, bonuses and shifts. How they managed it. Cleveland wanted to make a splash, and he got run out of Texas, right? Do you know who Deshaun Watson?
I feel like I've just seen his name in headlines about like assault.
Exactly.
Or something.
Yeah. All the massaging suits, right? So he's dead in the water in Texas, and so Cleveland Brown ownership says, "I've got a great idea. Let's give him $260 million guaranteed money to come to Cleveland." And by the way, he was injured. He's being sued. Nobody really knew what he's going to do.
And there was this, and then we got to Cleveland. There was a second round of allegations and things. Yeah.
And then what else happened this year, Forrest? Do you know? You remember?
With Deshaun?
With Deshaun, yeah.
Didn't he rupture an Achilles?
Yep. He went down with a bad injury.
Like not just like we can fix that injury. It's like your leg exploded. And I think the Jets are in a similar situation with Aaron Rodgers, where it's like we're stuck with this guy not because we like him, but because we signed this massive contract. And then the Cowboys are a really great example where they paid Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb a freak amount of money, like just an insane amount of money, and said, "We believe you're the guy. You're going to take us." And then Dak Prescott gets injured, or Deshaun Watson, has too much fun in a massage parlor, whatever it is, and then then they're stuck paying with him, and that becomes a problem because then they can stop playing that guy. They could bench him like they're doing with Aaron Rodgers or whatever, but they can't necessarily. They don't have the budget to go buy a new guy.
So it really hurts like their offensive line or their cornerbacks, whatever they need to beef up. That's why you'll see quite often the most successful teams. I know we're talking about the rotten teams, but the most successful teams, the ones who have some, number one, they're consistently great in the draft, or at least really good in the draft. Number two, they have a window. When they get a really good quarterback right off the draft, they've got 4 years, I think now, on the rookie contract, real low dollars. So then they can spend money on getting great receivers for them, better offensive line, better defense, right? But at some point, either at the end of their contract, they either have to sign them for a ton of money. You could do a bar graph on that and show whenever you see a great quarterback on rookie contract, how good their team usually is. And then as soon as they got to pay him the outrageous amount of money on the second contract, the graph's going to go down in success because they can't afford to sign all their other really good players or keep all their other really good
yeah,
players.
We talked about that like maybe a month ago with the Chiefs, how you were praising the Chiefs management for managing their budget really well. And you were also saying that Patrick Mahomes like took a salary cut, right, to be able to help buy good players around him, right?
So enough, right? I mean, yeah, at least not milking them dry, but still, how did that work out?
I was about to say, that didn't
so
work out
good
great in the Super Bowl. But yeah,
well, like the 49ers are a good example, and in contrast to the Panthers, and I'm just going to use that example. Like the 49ers drafted Brock Purdy, who he was like the last draft in the NFL, or he was the last pick in the draft. He was cheap. And they
cheap, the cheapest you can get.
The cheapest you can get, except for just like signing a free agent or signing undrafted signings. But like they picked him up, and then they played him for cheap, and then they were able to go get they got Deebo Samuel, they got George Kittle, they got all those guys, and then they picked up McCaffrey, and going contrasting that to the Panthers, who like they gave up their star player and have shelled out money in what I would say foolish situations and foolish ways. Like just to your dad's point, like there's a smart way to spend your money and manage it all versus like the Panthers or the Cowboys are another great example. Dak Prescott, he's a mediocre quarterback, but he's one of the top paid players.
Yeah. So this is all you're bringing up lots of interesting stuff. I don't even know where to begin, but we've been talking a lot about management. And just
ownership.
Yes, that's a better word, ownership. But just to kind of segue into where I really want Forrest to dig into is how much do coaches play a role in this type of stuff? Like, is all the blame on management for a bad team, or how do coaches play a role?
I think it depends on the team, and and I think a lot of it to kind of harp back what we were talking about is. I think it depends on the management. Like I was watching SportScenter, and I thought they said it really well. Or maybe it was Get Up or one of those morning sports shows. But they're talking about the Jets, and they're saying like, how is the Jets not done better? They've had Aaron Rodgers, they picked up Devontae Adams, and then like a couple games in the season, they dropped their coach Robert Saleh or whatever his name was, and they were talking about how Robert Saleh didn't perform. And the host of the show kind of turned it back and said, well, when was the last time the Jets were actually good? And like they were using that as to say, like, at that point, it's not a coaching problem. Like it's a management problem. Like there's something up atop that's not letting them breathe or letting them work. And a couple of years ago, you saw with the Browns, they were like a cycling. It was like just a coaching carousel, as we like to sometimes say. It's just like it's a revolving door of coaches coming in and out. I think they went through 12 coaches in 13 seasons. I think it was the stat. It was just like, and at that point, no one can succeed.
Wow.
Like it's tough. Yeah. But I also think that you look at coaches like Andy Reid, for example. I think the Chiefs have had a pretty steady management ownership situation, but Andy Reid came in and really turned that program around with the way they prepare and like their game plans. So I would say that like I almost would kind of want to say it's like 60-40, like 40% the coach is really, really in charge of what happens on a day-to-day or like, game-to-game basis. But you also, I would say 60% goes on the management to staff that team, to manage that, salary cap. But then also I think they're in charge of a lot of culture of, does the coach feel safe enough in his position that he can make the risks that he needs to take and do what he needs to do? Versus, is it the Browns where it's just a revolving door, or Robert Saleh where it's just a hot seat? I mean, it's the same thing I would say with any job situation. Is it a toxic workplace or not?
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring up that. It sounds like you're saying if a coach doesn't feel like safe in his position, like you're saying, then he will try to play it safer in the games. But I guess that usually leads to losing, right? And then it's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah, or the opposite. Like, he starts taking unnecessary risks. Like, I need to win this game. I need to win this game. We're gonna, tee up and run this, this crazy scheme or do these things. And I'm trying to think, like, and that usually happens a lot. You'll see that happen a lot, especially in like last years of coaches' contracts, where they're like, all right, I need to get my contract re-upped, so I'm gonna do this crazy thing, or I'm gonna play it safe. One of the two. Either way, I don't think it's a smart way of playing football.
NFL rotates about 7 to 8 head coaches every year. You can count on being about 7 or 8 vacancies out of 32 teams. So give you an idea that it is. There's somebody always on the chopping block.
Well, yeah. So where does a coach go when they're out? When they're not a head coach, or when they're fired from being a head coach?
Back to a lot of them come up. They were offensive coordinators before, defensive coordinators, and everything in coaching, college and NFL, is all about the relationships they've had and who they've coached with before. And quite often, in one of their network, they'll go back and coach with somebody they used to coach with. Quite often, they go back and work for somebody that used to work for them. If you look at the coaching trees, it's kind of funny to see how that happens. But some are really old, some quit. I don't know, but most of them get back into one of their specialties.
Yeah, I mean, you had Pete Carroll, who got out of Seattle, retired, and now he's back being the head coach of the Raiders. Then you have like guys like Bill Belichick who leave there and then, or leave New England and then take a couple years off, and then they show up in Chapel Hill. You got like, some of them are offensive coordinators. Some of them, I mean, I don't know. McCarthy, I think, is still looking for a spot.
He's taking the year off.
He's taking the year off. Like, some of them land somewhere real quickly. Some of them go back to college. I mean, Nick Saban coached in the NFL, went back to college. I mean, I think it's less. Sometimes you got to look at it more like it's a job market. Like, sometimes they go to college, sometimes they go pro, sometimes they take a smaller, lower position, and some of them just hang it up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have a good amount of money at that point that you could just go do whatever you want, start a churro truck or whatever. But I don't know. Do coaches get paid much more than players? Or
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
And
some more stable. Depends who it is. And here's classic bad ownership. Also, some head coaches, they'll give them a deal for X amount of years, and then, like I heard, it was the Bears. I was hearing some numbers the other day. They're still. The Bears are even still paying 3 different coaches.
Whoa.
So it doesn't hurt their salary cap, but it is the financial concern. In other words, they fire them and they still have 3 years on the contract. So they got to pay them. These head coaches aren't dumb. They're getting.
That's what happened with John Gruden when he was the coach of the Raiders. He signed a 10-year, it was like $100 million deal. And then 2 years in, they cut him and they were like, we're still on the hook for, hundreds of millions of dollars. Versus,
wow.
That or I was thinking, what's his name? Cliff Kingsbury, when he got fired from Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
He just bought a one-way ticket to Thailand and left.
No way.
He flew to Thailand. He said, "Don't call me. Don't email me. I'm not checking it." And that's what he did.
But he gets his paychecks.
He did, but he popped back up. Trust me, he popped up.
He came back pretty quick.
And the Commanders, he's their he's the quarterback whisperer. He's the one. Right, he's with Jaden Daniels, at the Commanders.
Okay, quarterback whisperer. Are there actual quarterback coaches? Is that what you're saying?
Well, he's really the OC, but some of them, yes, there definitely are quarterback coaches.
Okay, cool. Well, so Forrest, you've had a tradition for a few years now. Can you tell us about that now a little bit?
Yeah. Well, when I was at BYU, um, speaking of all this is all perfect kind of groundwork. I was getting ready to graduate from BYU, and I felt like I needed something to post on LinkedIn that would get me attention from recruiters. That I like that they would talk about me. I don't know. It was just, you know how it is. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to join LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and
Got to be
it's intimidate.
creative. Yeah.
And so I thought a lot about it. And then at the same time, I was watching SportsCenter, and I had seen that stat that I mentioned. It was like the Browns had been through 12 coaches in 13 years, and they had just fired a guy named Freddie Kitchens. And if you look at a picture of Freddie Kitchens, like he just looks like meatloaf. Like I don't know, he's just a hunk of a man, just a chunk of a
Yeah.
man.
His
And
neck is thicker than his head. Holy
yeah,
cow.
exactly. He's just a big old. As the kids say, he's an absolute unit.
Yeah.
But
He's always
anyway,
in the kitchen, I suppose.
yeah, and I was just like, how does one become an NFL coach? And like, do they post those jobs on a job board somewhere? And like, I just got kind of thinking about it, and I thought that's funny. And at the time too, you know, they had a really impressive roster. You know, they had Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, they had picked up Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. Like they just had this roster that was like, I remember looking at it and be like, how do they not win? Like, how do every year they're at the bottom of the league and they get the number one draft pick? Like they suck. And so I decided that I was going to apply to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And so then I wrote like this cover letter. And then I just said, you know, I have this idea of how I would save your team. And I had read this book. There was a team actually when I was growing up in California. There was a team. There's a high school that is famous for the longest winning streak in football, and they're called De La Salle. And De La Salle had this tradition that they would start every game with a trick play, and that was kind of a thing that they did to like energize the players. But then it was just like this way to kind of like, you know, jumpstart the game. Like if you could score on the first play of the game and you go up 7-0 with only 6 seconds off the clock, it's kind of demoralizing, right? So that was kind of the genesis of it. I was like, you know what, I'm going to start every game of the whatever season it was with a trick play with the Cleveland Browns, and we've got the personnel to pull it off. You know, you have all these incredible players. So um, I did it, and I posted on LinkedIn, and like it took off. Like people were just like, "This is so funny," and then I started getting a lot of like conversation from it, and so then it just turned into a yearly tradition. And the funny thing is, like the first couple of years, you know, was the Browns over and over and over and over again. And so then every year I would just say, you know, like I would strategize. Like, okay, well, you know, this year looking at your team or looking at what's going on, this is what I would do. And then it went on from the Browns, and then one year it was the Jets, and then the next, you know, one year it turned into the Jaguars. And the funny thing is, it was the year that Trevor Lawrence was graduating or leaving Clemson, and he was the number one pick. And I said, you know, you can't pick him up. He's not the guy. You know, you need to stick with Gardner Minshew and that beautiful handlebar mustache, and you need to do this. And then they hired Urban Meyer, and they drafted Trevor Lawrence. They did everything I told them not to do, and they sucked. And then the next year they were at the bottom of the league, and I applied to be the head coach again because they fired Urban. And I was like, hey, I hate to say it, but I told you so. But I can still save the team, and this is what I would do. And so that's been kind of my tradition. And then last year it was the Carolina Panthers. They were the bottom of the league, and it was funny because in September I moved to Charlotte. And so then, you know, I'd moved to Charlotte, and then a few months later, it was like, oh man, the Carolina Panthers are the team.
You were living in in
They
rich
were my
soil for bad football.
Yeah, they were my hometown team, and so I worked with a friend of mine, a couple friends of mine actually, Katie Baker and Todd. Shoot, I'm spacing on Todd's last name right now, but we filmed a hype video, and then I got a bunch of billboards put up from Charlotte all the way down to Columbia, South Carolina, and they were just billboards with my face on it. And I was calling out David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers.
As you should have. This gets back to ownership, by the way. But then
It does. And he was famous. He's famous for kind of, micromanaging and being in everyone's face. And so it got picked up by a local news station. I got interviewed, and that was pretty fun. And then this year, I made the move from Charlotte to Nashville.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Can we pause there?
Yeah.
I want to hear more about like that response. Like you got some local attention. Do you know if anybody at Carolina management saw this? Or
every year I post a letter on LinkedIn, but I also mail it in.
Do you fit a hard copy?
I mail in a physical copy with a resume, cover letter, and then what I did the year before, or what I did that year was, my strategy then is David Tepper had come out and been really clear that Bryce Young was his guy. Like it was not on the table to play someone else. And love it or hate it, I disagree. I don't think Bryce Young was the guy, but if that's what David Tepper wanted to do, is fine. So I said, well, you just brought in the soccer team to Charlotte. They had the Charlotte FC. Do you know who the highest scoring position on the field is?
Kicker.
The kicker. And so I decided that we were going to go all in and pick up a kicker.
Oh,
and we were going to perfect kicking. We were going to turn the kicking in football, it's deemed special teams, and we were going to make special teams special. And so we were going to do onside kicks, and we were going to give Bryce Young the ball more often and let him get more reps. We were going to learn how to kick 75-yard field goals, and
with a soccer player. Is that where you're saying you would poach a soccer player?
We were just going to poach a soccer player and really, really dial into the highest scoring position on the field.
That's awesome.
So
wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I kind of found that as I was doing some research, and I thought that is really interesting. But you think about it, anytime you score a touchdown, they get an opportunity to kick the extra point and then field goals. So they get a lot of opportunities to run up points. That and a quarterback doesn't always score. I mean, they get 6 points out of that.
Yeah.
If they rush a touchdown, running backs, same thing. But the ball gets spread out amongst so many different positions.
Right. That's fair. Yeah. That makes sense. So okay. Well, sorry. Yeah. Thanks for letting me pause you on that. But yeah. So it sounds like Charlotte was fun. You got to make some buzz there. But yeah. let's talk about this year. Who was the worst team, and what'd you tell them?
Yeah, so then I moved to Nashville, or it was in the process of moving to Nashville, and the Titans. I decided, the Titans were pretty poor, and so I decided, and I was like, you know what? And they got the number 1 draft pick, which traditionally is kind of the league's nice way of saying you're the bottom of the barrel, you're the bottom of the league, but you get your first pick at making your team better. So so I applied to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans right here in Nashville. And the Titans, I think, so going back to what we were saying earlier is, this whole thing started with like a disappointing team, the Cleveland Browns. You have all these players that are really good. Why aren't you winning? I think the Titans are kind of on the bottom of the opposite end of that spectrum, where it's like, your quarterback is Will Levis, who, had a good college career, but he's not an elite quarterback. I don't think anybody, I can't name their running back. I can't name anybody on their defense. Will Levis is the only guy I can, they gave up Derrick Henry, they kind of given up their players. And so going into the draft is important. And so my opinion was, my strategy was, you got a really important thing going into the draft. Who you pick up is important. And my thought was, well, a lot of these guys like Will Levis, Bryce Young is another great example. A lot of these number 1 draft picks kind of turn into busts. And I think that the reason they become busts is because we pull these guys from Alabama, Georgia, Clemson. I'm just naming, these blue blood, historically really, really great programs. And the reason they're good at those programs is because they have a system that supports them. They don't have to be the man, because, when Bryce Young was at Alabama, he was throwing the football to some of the best receivers in the league, and he had the best offensive line in the in college blocking for him. And so then he lands at the teams like the Panthers, and it's like, we got a hobbled together offensive line. We got nobody receivers. Like, they're not used to assuming that position. And so, my strategy for the Titans was, you need to draft a player who's used to that, who's used to being the guy, who's used to kind of playing in a subpar situation. And so
carrying the team.
Carrying the team, yeah. So I said, you got to use your first draft pick to go pick up Ashton Jeedy out of Boise State.
Oh yeah, he was the one that they wanted to win the Heisman, right? Everybody thought he should have won.
He should have won. He got snubbed. He totally got snubbed. And so now that was my strategies. If we want to win in Tennessee, we want to win here in Nashville, you gotta establish this culture of winning and grit and winning with less. And Ashton Jeedy coming, what he did this year coming out of Boise State is incredible. I mean, he had an okay offensive line, and he was able to really put up some incredible numbers. So I put up some billboards here in Nashville, and put up some billboards down in Super Bowl City, down in
Did you?
Orleans. Put my face on it and said, "Hey, let's get this going."
Have you got any pictures of these billboards? Do you post those online somewhere? Do you do something fun with that?
Yeah, so I do post them. I will tell you a funny story. So I posted this year. I posted the Super Bowl because I had some right outside the Caesar Superdome.
Holy cow!
Billboards.
He's got a lot more money than you do, Cooper. Apparently.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who's funding this? First of all,
well, to my wife's dismay, it's me. So last year in Charlotte, I worked with a friend of mine who got them for me for free.
Oh, nice.
Wow,
They were
nice.
donated by a friend of his, and so that was cool. This year, I found this little startup out of Utah, actually, called Blip, and you can
the electronic billboards.
Yeah, you just pay for you can say, hey, look, I got my budget's $10 today. Throw me up there for 8 seconds or whatever it is, and so I just did that with a handful of boards, and I think
That's awesome.
So
okay. Wow.
But just threw that out there, had some fun with it. I have some pictures.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since we're on a podcast, can you read us some of the lines that you wrote, or what were you saying?
Yeah. Let me move this over here. I can send you the pictures too if you want to.
Yeah,
Actually,
we need pictures, Coop.
If you've got them up, yeah, you can screen share, because some people do watch this on YouTube, and this is a plug for the listeners. We do put this on YouTube, so go there to watch some of the stuff.
Let me pull these up right together. But I ran these, and then actually, funny enough, I found this out the hard way. The Tennessee Titans are actually a client of ours.
Oh my goodness!
Oh,
Kind of not really. And
okay.
So my boss called and was like, "Hey, my boss did not care, but he's like, there's some people who are a little upset by this."
Oh man!
So
I went to look for your post right before this episode because I was trying to remember which team you had done, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So you took it all off all of your socials, huh?
I did.
Dang.
Just make life a little easy. Yeah, my boss was like, "This is so." But yeah,
that's awesome.
So I had some in Tennessee. It said, "Mrs. Strunk, hire me." And then this one, Mrs. Strunk, just bumping this to the top of your inbox. This one's here in Nashville. This one, Mrs. Strunk, new stadium deserves a new kind of coach. This one is here in Nashville. Mrs. Strunk, there's nowhere to go but up. This one was right outside the Superdome.
That's
Mrs.
unbelievable.
Strunk, you want the Titans here next year? So yeah, that's what I've got.
So cool, man.
So that's what I do in my spare time.
You do it.
Coach of NFL teams.
I think all that's awesome.
It sounds like you had to take it down pretty fast, but were you able to get any sort of buzz or response from this year's campaign?
Not really. It was up for about 24 hours. There's some people from the executive team who were upset about it, but then there were some who reposted it on LinkedIn. I've never gotten a response from a team. I got interviewed last year by the news, but that's about as exciting as it got.
Hey, stick to it, right? Stick to itiveness. You got it. persistence.
Yeah.
May not land me an NFL job, but it's helped me get some other jobs.
Yeah, it's showing that you're a professional troll, which is exactly what the ad industry loves. So
Exactly.
but you're like making a real case here.
Yeah, I mean, some years is a little bit snarky, more snarky than others. Like when it was, the Jaguars year two, it was a little bit more fun to be like, "I told you so."
Yeah.
And like last year, the kicker was a little bit sarcastic, but at the same time, I think what's been fun about it is like, what is a really interesting, strategic approach that we could really commit to. The kicker thing was funny, but there was a high school in Florida that only kicks onside kicks, and they win like 95% of their games. And like I said, De La Salle, they run a trick play. They used to, they don't do it anymore, but they used to run a trick play to start every game. And I think that, like, we said this earlier, coaches get safe, and they get, you start to play. There's a phrase that I remember when I was playing football, we used to say all the time, is like, you have to play to win, not play to not lose.
Yeah.
Some of these strategies, it's a little bit crazy, but in some ways I feel like if you commit to it, there's no reason it couldn't work,
What I think is going to happen to you one day, you keep this up one day, one crazy sub guy in general manager's office is going to call you up and say, okay. This is funny. It's good. But we kind of like one of your ideas here. We're just, we want to flesh this out with you a little bit.
I hope
anyway.
so.
I mean, anything can happen. You might get some college guy call you up. You just never know. The world is crazy, but I think you could end up being, a part-time advisor. Somebody's going to pay you a few bucks and say, all right, bring that crazy idea. We want to talk a little bit more of that. Where in the world did you come up with that? You just never know. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And you've got in this one, like you said, make some really good points. And I think it's just fun. I'm with you. I think it's great for elevating you in terms of recognition. You just never know. In today's world, you really never know how something might catch fire. And Charlotte showed you it caught fire for a TV station, and you could do that and more one day. It just keep it up. It's fun and impressive. I think it's great.
Yeah, when on my last job, my boss was a big Panthers fan. He said the best thing that they could do is hire you for a day. Just like you're the head coach for a day, and bring you in, and then just gloriously fire you at the end of the day. Like, you're out of here. So I'm waiting for that call.
We probably just got to get you TikTok viral, and that'll be enough for a team wants to just have a good PR moment, hire you for a day, like you said. So from both of you, I want to hear some final parting words. If you could say anything to these coaches of the worst teams out there right now, what would you say? What would be your parting words?
I'll let Forrest wrap it up. I'm just going to remind you, the combine is February 24th through March 3rd. So hopefully you've worked their butts off is what I'd tell them. Get to the combines. There's a lot of guys, the very best of the best. Some of them don't work out anymore. Cooper, we can talk about that later. And the draft's already coming up April 24th, 26th. So what makes the NFL so brilliant? There's something to talk about all the time with NFL football. So, I think some of it goes back to common sense, really using some common sense. Well, the Panthers used the poorest sense of error. They traded up to go get our quarterback and gave away one of the best receivers in the NFL right now. I mean, they gave away the only stock we had. And then we had, anyway. So I think some common sense and some reasonable approach to budgeting and spending, and look for quality human beings too. Sometimes they go for that talent and they're blinded by the talent and the film. And yet there's red flags around and they know it. They've got the organizations to do the homework, and some of them will just bite the bullet and go ahead and get the guy that's driving 120 miles an hour down in Athens, Georgia, chasing after something. You just, some things you just got to be smarter as an organization, I think. And get the owners out of it a lot more and let really quality football people, general managers and their teams, let them do their job and not be dictated by those that own.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say the same thing to the management and get out of the way of the coaches. I mean, I think general managers need to be involved one way or the other, but like ownership is just like, let the coaches and, let those guys make decisions who they want. And then for the coaches, I think you said it well. It's just like, don't, and I said it in the letter, don't always go after the blue blood programs. Like they have good teams, they have good players. They often have some of the best, but you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, love him or hate him right now. He was one of the best quarterbacks, future Hall of Famer. Came out of Cal. Cal was kind of I wouldn't call that a blue blood program. You look at guys like
look at Steve Smith and the Panthers, right? Came out of University of Utah.
Exactly.
Oh.
And he was the greatest receiver we've had.
Yeah, and you look at some of these like the players who or even Patrick Mahomes, Texas Tech. When was the last time you watched a Texas Tech game? But I think you've got to find those diamonds in the rough. It's not easy, but I also think that NFL draft bust is also far too common. So those are the two pieces of advice.
Okay. NFL draft bust, when you're picking whoever just the hottest commodity, supposedly the number one draft pick, instead of picking someone who'd actually be a right fit for your team.
Yeah, or like bust is sometimes too. It's just like it's this like super hot player. Oh, he's super. Like Deshaun Watson's a great example. Like he had an incredible college career. He had a great first year or two, but then all of a sudden he just kind of wet the bed.
Gotcha.
Just busted. Just kind of became in carbine terms, a lemon.
Okay. Well, I have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Like, these are all professional football players, though. I mean, if you make it to the NFL, if you make it to that draft, you got to be pretty darn good at playing football, right? Relatively. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it feels like I get that some people are elite. You mentioned how somebody wasn't an elite quarterback earlier for the Titans, but like, I don't know. If you're just a good coach, can't you kind of work with what you got and do okay? If your coaching is great?
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms you're opening up.
I think you can.
You can look at Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they've drafted defense forever, and they have a really stable, great coach, and in some sense great. Other sense, they can't get past a certain ceiling because of that approach.
Well, I think it's a great example. Like, what did they say this year? Mike Tomlin has never, like, in his whole time, he's never had a losing season.
Correct.
So he's like been on the winning side of 500. Has he won I think he's won a Super Bowl or two.
They haven't won a playoff game though in like 6 years or 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, you could do all right, but all right is just all right. You're not going to be at the bottom of the barrel, but you're also not going to be at the top of the list.
So is it? Well, I saw this with our with our Epps Sports group chat this year. Is they were kind of rooting for Carolina to lose more this season so that we could get.
Oh yeah, we screwed up so bad. We won our last 2 games, 2 of the last 3 games, and that bounced us from the top 1 or 2 picks. There's still value in the top 1 or 2 picks. There's great value in it. If you're smart, you can trade out of the top 1 or 2 picks and get all sorts of extra picks and money, and you know what I mean. It's still an asset. It's a really good asset.
I guess the point I'm leaning to is, it sounds like maybe you don't, even if you can be all right, maybe you don't want to be all right for the sake of your organization. Maybe you want to be the worst.
For one season,
rebuild.
maybe.
Yeah.
If you're already down near the bottom, just stay there. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just don't tell anybody or you'll get in trouble like the Dallas
Right.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can't openly throw the season or throw the year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting. Gosh, I mean, every time we do an episode, I've got more questions than answers by the end. So we'll do this again. Forrest, this is not the last time you'll be on SportSense, as long as you permit us to be blessed with your company.
Ryan, say if he's willing, this might be all he's willing to give us, Coop.
Yeah, this is my first podcast appearance. I will be back. This is
yes.
super fun.
Well, thanks for giving it to us, and thanks for letting us go late. I will wrap. I'll hold on. Let me give my little conclusion. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's our episode for you this week. So make sure to keep up with us this week on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Our username is @SportSense Podcast. And if you have some questions or story for us to talk about next week, again, please email us at sportsensemailbag@gmail.com. or just click on it below in the show notes. And with that, guys, we'll see you later.
See you, Coop.
See you later.
SportSense.